You're listening to the Valley Current.
Hey, David.
Yeah. Hey, Jack.
How you doing, man?
I got my whole thing set up because I was just coming off another call here. So it's all set up, the light, the mic, the whole thing.
You look great.
Well, thank you. So do you, and your still picture in front of your impressive law books.
The still picture is a great picture of me. And I'll put my real picture up, which is I just got a crew cut today. And the guy was like, "Do you want to get ready for the summer?" I said, "We're in winter." And I said, just make it as short as you want. So he buzzed everything off. It was pretty funny.
I think it looks great.
Well, it's the modern approach, I guess. It's the Mr. Clean modern approach to life.
It's very low maintenance.
Yeah, it's very low maintenance. That's what you have to say about getting a haircut like this.
Yeah.
So how's life in the storytelling business? That's really what you still do, right?
Yeah, that's why I thought I'd connect with you here because I've been doing a lot of that with lawyers, so it's always something having to do with storytelling and, it was marketing, messaging, business stuff. But I did a webcast for NIDA in April that something like 500 people attended, and it's still up, you can still get it.
Beautiful. Out
of that came a big engagement with California Department of Transportation, and then one with the Marines. I already had one set up with the SEC. And then I did a keynote in Nevada Bar and got some more out of that. And then I did a keynote for Wyoming Bar and got some more out of that. And
all on Zoom, right? Not in person.
No, the Nevada one was in person at the Hotel del Coronado in San Diego, which is awesome.
Oh, that's big. Okay, so you did some stuff even during this difficult period.
Yeah. The Wyoming Bar one was supposed to be live, but they made it virtual like at the last minute, like a week before. So I did it from right here. And that was a particularly weird one. It was they booked me to do a keynote at their conference, but the keynote was 3.5 hours long. Wow. So it was more of a seminar, and they didn't want it to be. They didn't want it to be just storytelling for court, like I always talk about. They wanted it to be like leadership skills for lawyers.
Wow.
With storytelling and communication. So I made a keynote out of other fragments of things I've done in the past, and I worked so hard on it that it ended up going really, really well. And I got 3 cases out of that too.
Now, do you record all that stuff? Do they record it for you?
They're all recorded somewhere. My live one in Nevada was recorded.
You got to get that 3.5 hours so you can work with it to put snippets on your website, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm getting to. I thought that's why I wanted to reach out to you, is that it's like, there's all kinds of little mechanical things you can do to like put yourself online.
Right.
But I'm finding that lawyers aren't looking online, and they're not looking for anything like I'm offering. They're not seeking it out. And so I'm having quite a bit of trouble if they haven't just seen me speak somewhere. That's easy. I mean, I saw him speak. I want to book the guy to do a thing. But anything other than that arrangement, I don't have any idea how to really get in front of their eyeballs, because they don't seem to go on LinkedIn. And, most lawyers, there's always a few. And if they are, they're not looking for like storytelling helper guy, or at least it doesn't seem that way. So that's why I'm like, I don't know. Are there forums that I don't know about where I could be more targeted in reaching them? I'm already at NIDA quite a bit. They know how to find me at NIDA, but they're not always looking at NIDA either, so.
Right. So you've got to build a bigger profile, in my opinion, at a place like LinkedIn that has more lawyers. That's the general place that has more lawyers. But, there are these specialty places like Super Lawyers, which, to some degree has a much more refined list of lawyers. Like, ideally, you would think NIDA would have more impact, right? But NIDA really doesn't, because people don't like spending money on NIDA. NIDA charges, even though they're a nonprofit. So the real question is, like, how do you build a bigger following on a place like LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn, if you did like the podcast that we do, I post them on LinkedIn, they reach a certain number of people. But if you did kind of like a series of podcasts, and we could try to do that and test it and let it be your set of podcasts too, and have like 2 channels, my channel and then your channel on LinkedIn, that's focused on what does one do to be a persuasion scientist. That's really what you are. You're really like no, seriously. I think that is the right title. I think the book you have to read, and then you have to show how you've been practicing that book, is by a guy who you probably know named Cialdini.
Influence. Or he's got one called
Persuasion.
Yeah, I have both of them.
You know, he's an applied psychologist. He's sort of a little goofy on the edges, but in general, and and if you listen, I've been listening on tape as I've been bike riding because I'm trying to like lose 50 pounds. I've lost 40 so far. So
congratulations.
I've been like really working out a lot. My wife is like, God, your blood pressure's way down. This is great. Like I'm just trying to do what I wish in some ways my younger brother died. Of course, he should have done this whole regimen. He was overweight. He had a lot of issues. He smoked. I don't like, there's a lot of differences between us. He dropped out of high school. I didn't. Like, there's a lot of differences. Yeah. But the point is that, like, I've been listening. I got this great set of earphones and you can ride a bike and the earphones don't go over your ears. They just go over your temples. They're like the bone conduction stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you can hear, but you can also hear the traffic because you could get hit by a car if you're not careful. So
yeah,
I've been riding a bike like an hour and a half a day. So it's a good 30 miles. I go about 20 miles per hour. So I get like 30 miles in a day. And then I do an hour of yoga at a studio with all these beautiful young women. I mean, it's a lot of incentive to be there. My wife is there too. So that makes it all legit. But the point that I'm making is I've been listening to these books, including Cialdini. Is that his name? Cialdini?
I think. Yeah.
And he's got this great book called Influence. And he actually reads the book in his own tone. So
I have a million of them. I mean, I've been listening to lots of books. His is a kind of a seminal work from quite a while ago, I think. And there's some really great ones out there that are a little bit quicker. Like his is more of a textbook,
Yes, right.
There's one I'm in the middle of right now called Think Again by Adam Grant, which is it's just about how to change your own mind, or how do you change other people's minds? That's a really recent. I think he refers to the pandemic in it. So, and he is himself reading it. And there is the great Daniel Kahneman book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And that's kind of about, so I've been really kind of immersing myself in these persuasive, influence. I have that one.
Yeah. That's Robert B. Cialdini.
Well, if you're Italian, you'd say Cialdini. But in America, we'd probably say Cialdini or Cialdini or something.
He's got persuasion too, Cialdini. But having the author read it is, I think, a really fabulous thing because he does put the emphasis in the way he meant to present it.
Yeah.
I think that's a big difference than kind of the canned reader. So I have to say, I've gotten a lot out of listening. It's a pretty lengthy book, actually. So on tape, it's like 11 or 12 hours on tape on the Audible audiobook channel. But it's worth, whatever number of bike rides that turned out to be. And I have to say, he does say now when he says, who is he? He says, I'm a persuasion scientist. And I thought, that's really what you are. You're really for court. And I guess he did a little consulting for court, but he gave it up because he felt like he couldn't really be objective. Like he said, I don't really think I can be objective anymore. So he said he gave up doing this. He gave up doing the court stuff.
Well, here's my question really about the whole thing is this, is that when I work with lawyers, when they come to me, they'd say, "Hey, I have a case. I saw you speak. I have a case I'd like you to work on."
Right.
They're looking for me to do something.
Right.
And what I propose to them, I have a whole proposal, which I could probably screen share and show you that.
Yeah.
That walks through, like, I'm going to help you envision the story and find the actual narrative, not just the facts, but the narrative. And you have to find it. It doesn't just jump out at you.
Right.
And then create that story so that it can be repeated, like we did in the class, as an opening statement, or sometimes it's just the whole arc of the narrative in the trial.
Right.
And then we rehearse it to the point where it's nice and ready to go for trial. Now, the thing is, that all sounds really good, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll just pay me like a project fee to do that whole thing. Right. But the reality is pretty different. When we get in there, everything kind of changes so much, and maybe the case always settles. They don't really want it written down. They don't want to practice. I mean, I'm kind of wondering even though ideally that is what I can help them with and would love to help them with and work with them and be paid and all that stuff, the reality seems kind of different. And I'm wondering, what's the actual practical use of what I'm doing rather than what I idealize it to be, Yeah,
I mean, I think where I would head in terms of the deliverables, and then some litmus tester on the deliverables. And I did this in a case, and a lot of it, I would say, was sort of like using a lot of the principles of persuasion that you learn from your own practice, you learn from going to courses like yours and so on, is, let's say you can boil down your storyline to like 5 minutes. Let's pretend you can get that 5-minute kind of elevator pitch. Even shorter would be better, but let's call it 5 minutes. And then you do the other side's 5-minute version. And let's pretend you can get a really neutral audience that doesn't know you or anyone to look at those 2 5-minute versions over some type of focus group arrangement where they get a time limited access so they can't keep it, can't make it go viral, to a very confidential portrayal of each side of the case. And you just ask a bunch of questions like, what's your reaction to the plaintiff's case? What's your reaction to the defendant's case? And you just get a bunch of feedback. That has been such an amazing eye opener for most of my clients when I do that. Even though you might say, God, 5 minutes, that's all, 10 minutes, that's all on each side. And I say, yeah, because that is probably the mindset of the juror's reaction that you're going to get. Now, sometimes you learn older people don't like particular plaintiffs, or younger people don't like particular defendants. But that's data too, right? That's like helpful data for jury selection, right?
But what you're so you're talking about, you would take both sides of the case and you.
No, I would get somebody. I usually take the other side of the case and get someone to take my side of the case, that I sort of do the debriefing with them, some other partner or associate at the firm. And therefore, it's setting up a little bit of a weakness, arguably, as compared to, we did this in a case, and interestingly, we got a really mixed, the most recent case we did it in, we got really mixed results, and the client was like, yeah, I'm sure you would have done a better job, so I don't think this is a fair portrayal, because it was almost a deadlock set of jurors on 3 different sets of jurors of 12 jurors each. We did like 36 people, and we broke them into.
So you're doing like a paid focus group on all these.
A paid focus group. And what I'm saying is interesting is when you do it as a recording, not live, but you've recorded and you say to people, okay, the 12 of you are going to watch this, and then you're going to answer a series of questions, and then you get paid your $100 or whatever we paid them. And you do that 3 times, 3 different sets, and you keep track of who these people are. If you get deadlocks across all 3, you got a really close case, right?
Yeah.
That's going to tell you something. Now, obviously, they're not hearing all the evidence. They're not assessing all the credibility. They're just basing on what they hear from the little tiny mini opening.
Yeah, right.
But it still is an eye opener, because you get commentary back Like, well, why didn't this happen? And why didn't, like, you get that first impression, like that first either very discouraging impression or very supportive impression that tends to tell you what is a theme that's landing at some level, right?
Yeah, I've worked with the most recent case I did that went all the way to trial. A couple I'm involved in now are not there yet. One's settled, but this personal injury case, the guy did, I don't know, 5 or 6 focus groups, and he did it on his own. He ran it on his own, and for some reason, he did not present himself as the actual lawyer in the case. He said, I'm working with them and they want to know about this. But he was actually, and I watched these videos, these like hour and a half videos of the focus groups, watching him and then comment. There's a lot in there. But from my point of view, I mean, just as a consultant, I don't have the means to put together a whole focus group. And most trials are not, there's not enough, at least from what I can tell, they're not going to do a focus group on just any old case. It's going to have to be a pretty big deal case. Well,
that's the thing I'm trying to break the glass on. I'm trying to disrupt what I would say is now a very fat industry. These focus group guys minimally charge $100,000. I think the cheapest
it's insane.
It's insane, right? And there's even a TV program, you've probably seen it, called Bull.
Yep.
I mean, it turns the whole thing into kind of a joke that, you can actually game this. I mean, in some ways, that's Cialdini's point, that there's a certain degree of human reaction to certain things that sounds crazy, but it's true. It's true. You get people to operate in a certain way based on, who they are, or human instinct or human bias, whatever you want to call that psychological element. So I'm of the belief that you can do, but most lawyers aren't for a variety of reasons, but I'm under the belief you can do these little 5-minute snippets on each side, put it into a package, sometimes with 1 or 2 exhibits to give it a little more flavor. But even then, you're going to get people who scratch their head saying, I can't read it, blah, blah, blah. So keeping it as simple as possible. And then just see what the reaction of the group is. And I would say even an hour and a half is way too long. I mean, there's a lot of data there, but, you get a lot of bravado and people giving stand-up speeches and whatnot. You say, look, you guys have basically 20 minutes to a half hour to vote and tell us, just hearing what you've heard, who do you believe, who would you want to vote for, so on, and then why. And, if you get these split decisions, which I think is interesting. Now, you might say, well, that's not too informative, but I'm telling you, I think even before you plead the complaint, you're actually getting enough data to start to understand what's landing and what's not landing.
Yeah.
Most lawyers don't do this.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's gold, the reactions that you get from focus groups. But I'm trying to think of this as I'm one guy with a storytelling and persuasion, specialty.
Yeah.
And I don't really see a way for, I mean, it's hard enough for me. All I'm trying to do is get lawyers to pay attention to the fact that I can do anything to help them. And I'm a non-lawyer. So it's
good, which is a positive.
Yeah, it's a positive if they hear. The frustration I'm having with this is that getting their attention is really difficult. It's more difficult than getting business leaders' attention, because what I've always said is lawyers are not used to hiring someone outside to do anything except be an expert witness. Or maybe a focus group. But I'm coming in with something that doesn't really exist as a service already, at least not the way I'm presenting it. And I'm really looking for, what can I tell them that I can do, like practically, because I can't organize a whole focus group for them.
Well, so I think you can do, I know you don't want to say you can do it, but I think you can easily do these, what I call super mini focus groups for a project fee.
Where do the people come from?
The people come from, if you go to a place like SurveyMonkey, they'll actually find the people for you randomly. Now, you might want a certain demographic. You might say, this is a case in San Francisco. we want 36 randomly mixed people from San Francisco. So SurveyMonkey will say, okay, what do they have to do? They have to respond to a 10-question survey, and they have to watch at the beginning, before they respond, they have to watch 2 5-minute videos back to back, 10 minutes worth of video. The answers, so I'm not doing the jury verdict. I'm just doing the mini focus group, because this is one that becomes more like a jury mini mock trial. I'm just doing the simple, and they have to respond with these 10 questions. They have to type up some responses. Should take them no more than half hour total, maybe an hour. They'll say, okay, well, we'll find those people for you, $20 a piece, $30. They take a slice of it. They find the people, they get the data delivered to them. So they're kind of your back office. SurveyMonkey does it. There's another service by Amazon called Mechanical Turk that does it as well. So think of it as, the unfortunate part of these services is they tend to be people that are more gig economy savvy. So they're not the retired postal worker, the retired mom. They're people who are like, they're looking to make a few bucks on the internet.
Yeah, but at least they're human beings and they're not lawyers.
And
right?
They tend to be smarter. They tend to be almost a little too smart. So you do get some snarky stuff. Like you do get people that are like, well, this is an incredible story. This case sounds incredible. We can't believe these parties haven't settled. Like, how long have they done business together? So I think on average, it's one step above, because these are people that are in this whole new economy where they kind of believe, I don't even have to have a job. I can just do this gig stuff. I can go from one gig. They're working probably for some other company while they're taking their lunch break or something and making, $50 or $30 doing this gig stuff, because money gets transferred into their, I was going to say their crypto account, but it just gets transferred by, PayPal or something. And it all gets handled through SurveyMonkey. It's a client expense. And the beauty is you've got something more than just your opinion. I think what I'm saying is the problem, unless you have like super credentials like Cialdini, and even he, I think, probably would say, a lot of people said to him, so why should we believe your opinion? Well, I've only done like 500 research studies on all these things, blah, blah, blah. But when you actually have some data that's coming back from live people that you can get presumably some resume information about, it does tend to give more content to whether your assertions of where the strengths are correct.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
That's the biggest problem in the sales pitch is, so why should I believe you? Like what case did you last do where this worked or this didn't work? And the truth is you are capable of, your real asset is you are very capable of synthesizing a lot of data into a story, because you think in story and you know how to synthesize. There are a lot of lawyers, including trial lawyers, that can't do that.
Right.
They get stuck and they do all chronology, this day, this day. It's so fucking boring, it's just crazy.
And that's the thing is I'm trying to, this is really helpful because I'm trying to look at, they know they could use someone like me, but I don't think they're comprehending quick enough what slot I fill in. Like, what's the thing that they are missing? Because they're not going to generally say, I don't know how to write an opening statement, because they do. Or if it's just a hearing, I'm working with this case in Wyoming where it's not even to trial yet. She just needed a motion for an injunction. And the thing we wrote is like so good. It's so good. And we haven't gotten the verdict back from that yet, or the ruling back on that, but it's really good. And so there's a lot I can do, but it's generally that the lawyers are not seeing a gap that I can fill in. So I want to somehow articulate to them, no, you're not really good at storytelling yet, but I can help you be great at storytelling if you'll give me the chance to do that. And they generally, when they see me speak, they go, I think he could help. And they come to me with the idea. but
Right.
that's very few and far between, so that's what I'm wondering.
So your business is sort of convincing a lawyer that you can take them from good to great. Like they're even good or maybe bad to good, but really probably they want to hear good to great. And what is it worth to have it be great as opposed to just good? Because the real truth is that within a firm, unfortunately, this is just sad, firms existed so that lawyers could pitch other lawyers in their firm on how do we make this from good to great. But in today's model, yes, like really, why does a firm exist? Well, there's risk sharing, there's profit sharing, there's all this sharing. But the real reason Lincoln had a partner is Lincoln would pitch the partner, I'm going to make this argument. What's your reaction? The devil's advocate on the other side of the partner's desk. The desks were actually one desk with like drawers on both sides. They were called partners' desks.
Yeah.
Because the dialectic of you are the equivalent of that missing partner. Like you could argue you're like Lincoln's, I forget who his partner's name was, Beckett, or he had a partner. The guy was like more of a back office lawyer, but Lincoln gave him a lot of respect and gave his opinions a lot of respect. And Lincoln would pitch him on, I'm going to present it this way. What do you think? And they sat across this single desk, which, if you ever go into an antique store, you'll say, well, do you guys have any partners desks here?
I've seen those. Yeah, I have seen those.
They go up in value every year. Like I say to lawyers, we should just buy these desks as investments, write them off as expenses. And every year they go up in value because they're not making them anymore. They're essentially rarities. They have these beautiful leather tops to them. They're just gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea is you're kind of like what's now a necessity because most lawyers are not teaming that way, not even with their associates. It's a sad statement of what might be called the solo, what's even in big firms is kind of like the solo practice of law, because a lot of big firm lawyers just operate like this is my case and no one's going to cut in on it. And it's a sad statement, but there's some truth to it. Now you could say, well, you're really get hired more by the smaller firm or the solo that doesn't have the resource that say a bigger firm has. But I think the problem goes totally across the board, and you're a non-lawyer. So you can generate have you thought about this? Have you thought about that the lawyer's mind just wouldn't go to. So it's sort of good to great combined with this idea that you bring a lot of data to the table that they're not necessarily going to see.
So what about that's great. And what about the issue of they're not thinking they need anybody to write anything when they're early in the process, although of course I can help them envision the story. And then by the time they're close enough to the trial, they're so buried in stuff that they can't see the forest for the trees. And they're not thinking then that they want to bring some new person in. And then the case settles anyway. So I'm like, okay, that's that problem with a trial case. And then I'm going, where could I actually fit in with a lawyer that doesn't depend on trial, that it's some other service for some other oratory that also needs a narration,
Right. So one really very orthogonal approach would be you take a few courses that are available online. Maybe you take a few courses that are available in person in this area called becoming a mediator. And you're not doing it to become a mediator. You're doing it, say, I have a mediator certificate. I've learned all the rules and reactions to how people operate with mediators. I'm going to be your help in how to persuade the mediator, because like 90% of the civil cases are all going through pre-trial mediation. So if you say your target is help the mediator, and you're someone that comes in as, look, and you might even want to get somebody to bring you into a few mediations just to see how persuasion either works or doesn't work in mediation, because you'll observe a lot of very poor presentations in mediation where the mediator is asking some really basic questions like a judge would, particularly the retired judges. They're like, tell me this, tell me that. And the guy's not even prepared, or the gal's not even prepared. And I think that's an under prepared area. Like if lawyers prepared better for mediation, they would get better results. Like if we did this study of your techniques in pre-mediation, like persuasion, pre-mediation, that sort of thing, how do we get you to see yourself on Zoom? Because you could record it and then even help them play back what went wrong, what went right in this presentation. I think that business opportunity has got to be a lot bigger than what you're saying is like the shrinking trial opportunity. Yeah, right?
That's really great. I can just take a course on becoming.
Yeah. So really? There's a guy who's a non-lawyer. I think his class for this year, he does like 3 or 4 times a year. His name is Ron Kelly. I'll send you his link. He's not a lawyer. He's not even like an expert witness. He's not even as experienced as you are in storytelling. His name is Ron Kelly. His website is Ron, R-O-N, Kelly, K-E-L-L-Y. And basically, he was a consultant for land use planning. And what he discovered what that was, because he was kind of a real estate expert, he was kind of like a real estate appraisal kind of expert. What he discovered was that most of what he did was actually helping different stakeholders involved in the real estate, the neighbors and the government and the land use planning board, all come to agreements about, well, how are we going to get this golf course done? Or how are we going to get this park done? Like, how are we going to get this development project? And he realized, like 10 years of doing this, that he wasn't just a real estate consultant, he was really a mediator. And so he started studying mediation. And in California, it's not a licensed profession. It's kind of like you study and get a certificate from like UC Berkeley or Stanford or anywhere with 40 hours of classes that are now 40 hours of online classes. And basically you could say, I'm a mediator. Now, people ask you what you do. You're actually not going to do that. You're going to say, look, I've studied being a mediator. I've sat through a few mediations. I've sat through trials. I've sat through trial preparation. I've done a ton of stuff. And, I think I can help you improve your case for the mediation. And there's got to be a much larger addressable market.
Way larger. Right. Way larger.
And Ron, if you got to know Ron would link you up and would help market you to lawyers, because Ron is helping lawyers to some degree realize that you have to get better in putting yourself into the head of the mediator. So
what's his service that he's providing?
He teaches how to become a mediator. So that's his 40-hour class 3 times a year. He does mediation, although I think he's tapering down. And he does generally try to help lawyers that have complicated conflicts involving real estate on how to think of the angles. Like, what are the angles? Like, what's a land use technique that you can use to get, trade done? Like, he knows a lot, particularly in Northern California, of how you get certain trades of, I'll give you a park if you give me a high-rise building, like the way they trade off different things. There's a lot of that goes on. A lot of that.
Do you know him?
Yeah, I know him. I know him really well. I can make an intro for you.
That is actually exactly an area that I was like, there's mediation and there's bench trials and hearings or oral arguments that I've been like, I think I could have a lot of impact here, but I don't really know the terrain as well, because I've been on all these trial advocacy programs where I'm just getting stuff from the NITA programs where I'm just sitting around listening, but they're all trial-based programs. They're never about this other stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think conceptually there's a bigger market. And then the question is, how do you advertise into that market? Like, is it good to great in mediation, good to great in settlement?
Well, I think once it's to the point, here's my thing, is once it's to the point of having to write or position some marketing around this, I can do that till the cows come home. Okay. The trick for me is where to put it, because I'm not really convinced a lot of lawyers are surfing around on LinkedIn. They're somewhere else. They got to be somewhere else.
I'll tell you, I actually think there's an argument. I don't think it's expensive. I think there's an argument that lawyers are still reading paper products like legal newspapers.
So
and
I should be looking at legal newspapers or online versions of.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to clip out and like not facts, but PDF to you a couple of items I see just from the various legal newspapers and magazines that I scan. And you might be like, wow, that's interesting. I never thought of that. The problem is that it's typically, it seems more expensive, but I can tell you that there are people who claim that paying for Google AdWords for actually choosing words like improve mediation, improve settlement, like certain AdWords will ring a bell with certain clients and certain lawyers. And in many ways, like, for example, I thought of referring to you someone who came to me. She's not a lawyer. I'll just leave her nameless for the time being. Let's call her name Jane. And Jane has a conflict with what you would ordinarily think would be a conflict with like a live-in boyfriend, right? Except the boyfriend dies. And she was sharing a home with the boyfriend. And now the estate of the boyfriend, these are two older people, the kids kind of want her to move out of the boyfriend's apartment. And it's like a classic little family dispute, you would argue. She doesn't want to spend a ton of money with lawyers, but she wants to get kind of an understanding of how do I pitch the equitable case? And she's got a lot of facts and a lot of details. She's very disorganized. And in some ways, she wants to be her own lawyer. Now, you probably don't want to deal with that person because it's like a pedestrian. You know, you just want to hope somebody else helps them. Yeah. But the truth is, and this is the bad part of the Google AdWords, she's probably searching on Google right now, who can help me tell my story? Like,
well, yeah, the thing is on someone like that, I get that kind of thing every now and then with the business work.
Yeah.
And those kinds of, I mean, they never have any money. They want to pay you $75 to help them do something. And I'm like, no. So, I mean, I'm looking more for like someone who's got a real money to pay for a real case, even if the case is not going to trial, but something where the narrative is going to say is either going to sink or sail the ship, you know?
Yes. What's the smallest engagement you've ever done? I'm curious. What's the actual tiniest engagement you've ever done?
For lawyers?
Yeah, for anyone.
Well, there was a guy that would probably be Ed out in Pennsylvania, he's the first guy who ever said, you should do this thing where you work with lawyers on story. Like I was just doing lectures.
Right.
And then he comes to me with a real case, and that was a good case. But then he starts hiring me just to like check this thing out and check this thing out and rewrite this part and rewrite. So I started charging him like an hour.
Okay, little hourly gigs. Okay.
And it would be like, some cases would be like 3 hours and some would be like 13.
Right.
Or he just pays to have me do the whole case. And that's when I was charging. Now I'm charging at least double that for a whole case.
Right.
But even that seems really low considering what these cases are.
For the value proposition.
But it's getting in the door and getting them to understand it as a service. That's the barrier, not the money, you know? So that's the thing.
Right.
Shook, Hardy and Bacon, great, big, huge defense, corporate defense firm, had me do 2 days of training that they loved every second of. I was part of a bigger thing, but 2 days. And I immediately afterwards said, hey, all the attendees were like, hey, can he work with us on cases? So I shoot over my 3-page, thing on this, just crickets, like nothing. I'm like, okay, so what do you need to do? I mean, I was right there.
Right. Well, you have to be you have to be persistent. You have to be calling the attendees. You have to be saying, what does it take in a firm to get approved on a case? Because it's a client cost item. They usually could pass it through. It's not a big deal. In a big case, it's not a big deal. It's like noise. It's like rounding error.
So I should just keep hammering away. And
you need an assistant who's like trying to do the phoning. I mean, it's a lot of marketing and selling. I mean, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. So, but
super lawyers is a good thing that I hadn't.
Super lawyers, and I'll send you some other lists, but I'll introduce you to Ron Kelly.
Yeah.
I think it's worth, whenever he does his next series of classes, hopefully they're online, because they used to be in person, which were great. You actually met a lot of lawyers too. But of course, you're in
Minneapolis
now. So the online thing is probably a lot more convenient. And even meeting those folks online will probably generate 100 leads, because you'll get a lot of other people that will talk about you, because that is another business where you meet lawyers, is as a mediator. So you actually could start a mediation practice. It doesn't sound like it's what you want to do, but conceptually, anywhere that you can meet more and more lawyers is, and of course,
well, it all could lead. I mean, as long as they're paying me, a good sum to do the work, I don't really care if it's a mediation or a trial. I don't really care, So if I can get in front of them through these things you're saying, and then I got to redo my website to reflect a lot of this and stuff like that.
Or do another website. Or
that's probably what I'm going to do.
Do an A/B test between the two websites.
Yeah.
Good, David.
And the mini focus group idea is really good too.
Well, I'm gonna maybe find the video we used and send it to you, and see whether you think, God, it's so short. There's so little in it. Could you really do it with that? Like, I think there's actually like a paper that can be written on this that would introduce this concept of mini focus group. And it's almost at the level of trade secret. I'm giving it to you because I do think you could do it.
Well, I think it's a great idea, because the minute you say focus group on a case, people think $100,000.
Big numbers. So
they don't think this is going to be 20 grand or 10.
We're going to do a mini focus group for 15. And we're going to see if that makes it worthy of something bigger. Maybe not, but you're going to get a lot of valuable information, and we may not, either one of us may not see it. And then we can synthesize that into the rest of the story.
Like the roving, sort of focus group, or the super nimble focus group idea.
That's right. Yeah. That's what it is. Hey,
all right.
Good talking to you. I got to get to this other thing.
You too. And more to come. Thank you so much.
Take care. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.